The rope strain. Wood creaks. Someone screams, but not in pain, in warning. Boots pound across soaked earth, too late. The gate is already shut. Steel flashes in the dark, not raised high, not charged. It moves low, controlled, practiced. Men turn, slip, fall. Orders are shouted, but no one listens anymore. Something is wrong. The sound isn't battle. It's not shouting. It's not chaos. It's rhythm. One by one, the torches go out. Not blown. Taken. Breathing becomes loud, desperate. Someone drops a weapon. It clatters, echoing far longer than it should. A shadow steps forward, then another. They don't speak. They don't rush. They already know where everyone is standing. A man tries to bargain. His words vanish into the night. Another tries to run. He makes it 3 steps. Then silence, thick, pressing, unnatural. No horns. No alarms. No retreat. Just the sudden realization that this place, this moment, was chosen. Planned. The last torch flickers. Faces appear for half a heartbeat, painted, calm, focused. Not angry. Certain. Someone whispers a name. It isn't a prayer. The darkness moves closer. And just before everything disappears, a single thought cuts through the fear. If this is revenge, how long has it been waiting? The year was 865 AD. Northern Europe stood at the edge of something it did not yet understand. For decades, Viking raids had come and gone, fast strikes, sudden landings, swift withdrawals. Monasteries burned, villages vanished, but always the attackers returned to the sea. This time was different. Across the kingdoms of Anglo-Saxon England, rumors spread of an army that did not sail home, an army too large to be a raid, too organized to be coincidence. The Great Heathen Army had arrived. Its presence alone changed the balance of power. Not a single tribe, not a single leader, but a coalition, warriors bound by oath, blood, and memory. They moved inland. They fortified positions. They demanded tribute not as pirates but as conquerors. England was divided. Northumbria torn by civil war. Mercia uneasy and stretched thin. Wessex watching, waiting. Fear did not come from what was seen, but from what was expected. Because everyone knew why this army had come. Years earlier, a name had begun to circulate across halls and courts: Ragnar. Sometimes spoken with mockery, sometimes with dread. His death, public, humiliating, deliberate, had been meant as a message, a warning, proof that even legends could be broken. But legends have sons, and sons remember. The locations chosen by the Great Heathen Army were not random. Rivers, old Roman roads, fortified towns, each held military value and symbolic weight. Every movement felt intentional. English forces fortified key points, reinforced garrisons, and tightened discipline. Executions were carried out swiftly. Prisoners were not treated kindly. Strength had to be displayed. Yet beneath the rigid formations and sharpened spears, something else spread. Uncertainty. Scouts vanished. Messengers arrived late or not at all. Enemy movements were predicted and then avoided. It felt less like facing an army and more like being studied. Chronicles from the period describe nights filled with noise that never turned into attacks, drums in the distance, fires lit and extinguished, shapes seen on hills that vanished by dawn. Morale suffered, not because of losses, but because nothing happened when it should have. The Great Heathen Army waited. And in that waiting, England's leaders began to realize something chilling. This war was not being fought for land. It was being fought for memory. And memory does not forget. They were not kings. They were not heroes remembered in songs. They were men trained to hold ground and obey orders. Most had never crossed the sea. Few had seen real war beyond brief clashes and skirmishes. Yet all of them had been shaped the same way, through repetition, discipline, and fear of punishment more than fear of death. Their days began before dawn. The horn sounded once, not twice, never twice. Late rising meant public correction, sometimes worse. Armor was inspected every morning, straps tightened, blades checked for nicks, shields stacked in perfect alignment. Any flaw was recorded, any pattern of flaws was remembered. They drilled in silence. Shield wall formations, rotations, emergency responses. Every movement reduced to instinct. The rules were absolute. No wandering beyond assigned paths. No fires after dusk without command. No talking during watch. Breaking routine was dangerous, not because of the enemy, but because routine was the only thing keeping fear contained. The commander believed order could defeat anything. He had executed men for less. Among the garrison were veterans and boys who still carried softness in their faces. Some had families nearby. Others had been taken from distant villages and assigned here because no one would miss them if they vanished. They slept close together, not for warmth, but because isolation felt worse. Conversation stayed shallow, weather, rations, equipment. No one spoke the name everyone knew. They had heard how Ragnar died. Everyone had. The story had been told loudly, proudly, as proof of dominance, proof that even legends could be humiliated. But pride fades in the dark. At night, when armor was removed and weapons set aside, thoughts crept in. Why had the enemy not attacked? Why did scouts return empty-handed? Why did every path feel exposed? The men noticed things they didn't report. How sounds carried differently after sunset. How shadows lingered longer near the perimeter. How sleep came in fragments, broken by the sense of being observed. Training continued, harder now. The commander increased punishments. Missed drills meant lashes. Questioning orders meant confinement. Fear had to be crushed early before it spread. And yet fear adapted. Some soldiers began whispering prayers they didn't believe in. Others carried charms hidden beneath armor, small bones, carved symbols, things taken from home. One man carved lines into his shield, not marks of victory, just lines, counting days maybe, or nights. The garrison was disciplined, but tension eroded discipline from within. Routines began to feel like traps. Everyone knew where everyone else would be at every hour. Everyone knew which torches would be lit, which gates would open, which patrol would pass where. Predictability felt safe. But safety began to feel like exposure. A few men suggested changes, different routes, randomized watches. The suggestions were dismissed. Order must remain visible. And so the routine stayed. The men were not cowards. They would have fought openly, gladly. They understood battle. They understood death. What they didn't understand was waiting. Because waiting implies intent. And intent implies memory. On the surface, the garrison functioned as it always had. Orders given, orders followed. No signs of collapse. But inside, something shifted. Men stopped joking. Meals were eaten quickly. Silence stretched longer than necessary. Even the commander noticed it, though he never admitted it aloud. He doubled inspections, increased guard numbers, issued speeches about strength and loyalty. None of it changed the feeling. They were no longer guarding a position. They were being held in place. And somewhere beyond the walls, unseen and unheard, someone else was learning their habits just as thoroughly as they had been trained to learn commands. The men sensed it, not as fear, as inevitability. And without realizing it, Every one of them began to ask the same unspoken question. If the enemy already knows us this well, what do they know that we do? The first thing to change was the silence. Not the absence of sound, but the wrong kind of quiet. Nights no longer carried distant movement. No insects, no wind through the grass. Even the river nearby seemed to dull its voice after sunset, as if something pressed down on the land itself. Guards noticed it during watch. They stood longer than required, shifting weight, straining to hear something familiar. When nothing came, the quiet became louder than noise. The second sign was delay. A patrol failed to return on time. Not vanished, just late. When they finally appeared, they offered no explanation beyond shrugs and confusion. They insisted nothing had happened. But their faces said otherwise. They avoided eye contact. They spoke quickly. They could not agree on small details. No report was filed. The third sign was repetition. The same figure was seen twice in one night, on opposite sides of the perimeter. A torch glow flickered on a hill where no path existed. By the time eyes focused, it was gone. Always gone. Footprints appeared at dawn, not leading inward, not leading away, just there, as if someone had stood watching and then decided not to move further. The commander ordered tighter watches. More torches, more men. That only made it worse. The torches began to fail. Not all at once, one here, one there. Flames guttered despite dry air and fresh oil. When relit, they burned lower than before, casting shadows longer than they should have been. Men blamed poor supplies. No one said what they were thinking. Animals reacted next. Horses refused certain areas of the yard. Dogs stopped barking at night, not sleeping, not resting, just silent, wide-eyed, alert, whimpering under breath. One guard claimed he heard, breathing behind him during watch. When he turned, nothing was there. He was punished for distraction. After that, men stopped reporting things. Messages became unreliable. A signal horn sounded late. Another sounded early. Once, a call echoed back when no one was positioned to answer it. Confusion spread quietly. Patrol routes overlapped without command. Men encountered each other where no meeting was scheduled. Questions were asked. No answers matched. Maps were checked. Nothing was wrong. The gates were found unlatched twice at dawn. No signs of forced entry. No missing equipment. Just open. The commander ordered an inspection for sabotage. None was found. No one confessed. No one accused. Yet the feeling deepened. As if the place itself no longer belonged to them. Time behaved strangely. Watches felt longer, meals shorter, sleep fragmented, dreams vivid and unpleasant, filled with running, darkness, and the sensation of being surrounded without seeing anyone. Men woke unsure if they had heard footsteps or imagined them. They stopped removing armor at night. Not ordered, instinctive. The final warning came without drama. A routine patrol walked the outer boundary at dusk. Same path, same spacing, same pace. They returned early. One man short. No signs of struggle, no blood, no dropped weapon. His shield still leaned against the wall where he had left it. When questioned, the patrol could not agree on when they last saw him. One said moments ago. One said much earlier. One said he never noticed him missing until the count. The commander dismissed it as exhaustion. A search was scheduled for morning. That night no one slept. The walls felt closer. The dark heavier. And somewhere beyond the reach of torches and certainty, something waited, not rushing, not retreating, simply allowing the tension to tighten on its own. Because whatever was coming did not need surprise. It already had familiarity. And the men guarding the outpost, though still standing, still armed, still disciplined, shared the same unspoken understanding. These were not warnings meant to be stopped. They were warnings meant to be noticed. It began without a signal. No horn, no shout, no warning that could be pointed to afterward. Just a moment where everything felt misaligned. A guard reached for his torch and felt nothing but air. Another turned to speak and realized the man beside him was no longer there. Somewhere near the gate, a chain rattled once, then stopped. The stillness fractured. Footsteps sounded from the wrong direction, not running, not marching, measured, calm, as if whoever was moving already knew there was no need to hurry. A command was shouted, another overlapped it, a third contradicted both. Men moved, then froze, then moved again. No formation formed. Torches failed faster now. Flames bent low, then vanished, leaving pockets of darkness stitched between walls and buildings. The yard broke into fragments, lit here, blind there. Shapes crossed those fragments. Not clearly seen, never long enough. A shield struck the ground. Not dropped, placed, as if someone no longer needed it. A helmet rolled, stopping against a post with a dull sound that echoed far too loudly. Someone shouted a name. No answer came back. The gate area erupted in motion. Too many men trying to move through too narrow a space. Orders turned into noise. Noise turned into panic. Then the rhythm returned. Not footsteps exactly. Not marching. Something between the two. A pattern men couldn't follow but instinctively reacted to, turning toward it too late, stepping where it had already been. One torch flared briefly, lighting faces for a heartbeat. Not screaming. Not enraged. Focused. The light died again. Men began backing into walls, into each other, into uncertainty. Every sound became suspect. Every shadow a threat. Familiar structures felt rearranged, as if the yard had subtly changed shape. Someone tried to rally the line. The words failed. Another voice took over, louder, sharper, but it cut off mid-command, swallowed by the dark. No one could tell how many attackers there were. 5. 50. The question stopped mattering. Movement came from behind, then from the side, then from nowhere at all. The sense of direction collapsed. Men turned in circles, unsure where the perimeter even was anymore. A bell rang once. No one remembered ringing it. The rhythm shifted closer. Not faster. Closer. A man ran. He made it across the yard before stumbling, not over a body, not over debris, but over empty ground he had crossed 100 times before. He didn't get up. Others stopped running after that. Somewhere metal scraped stone slowly, deliberately, as if to announce presence rather than hide it. The sound moved, then paused, then moved again, always just beyond reach. Breathing grew loud, uneven, ragged. Men began clustering instinctively, backs to one another, weapons raised toward shadows they couldn't define. They waited for impact that didn't come. Instead, the darkness pressed inward. Torches were relit, then immediately extinguished, again and again, oil wasted, hands shaking. The attackers did not rush the center. They circled it. A low sound drifted through the yard. Not a shout, not a chant, something quieter, almost conversational. No one understood the words. Understanding wasn't required. The sound alone was enough. One by one, the outer edges of the garrison ceased to exist. No calls came from those posts. No signal of retreat, just absence spreading inward like water soaking cloth. A final attempt was made to form ranks. It failed before it finished. Because discipline depends on visibility. And there was none. At some point, resistance stopped being coordinated. Each man existed in his own narrow space of fear and reaction, cut off from everyone else. Time stretched. Moments felt long, long moments felt sudden. Then gradually the noise thinned. Fewer shouts, fewer movements, less confusion. Not because it resolved, but because it ended. The rhythm faded last. When it stopped, it left behind something heavier than silence. No signal of victory followed. No pursuit. No announcement. Whatever had come here had no need to stay. By the time the first pale hint of morning reached the horizon, the outpost stood intact. Walls unbroken. Structures standing. Weapons scattered where hands had left them. No signs of battle. No clear signs of defense. Just emptiness where certainty had been. The garrison did not answer the dawn call, and no one inside could say exactly when the incident ended. Only that at some point, the darkness no longer moved, and nothing moved in its place. The response did not come immediately. At dawn, a messenger arrived at the outer perimeter and received no answer. He waited, called again. When the gates remained closed, he left, assuming a delayed watch change. By midday, concern replaced assumption. A second messenger rode in with written orders. He found the same silence. No horn, no movement, no signal from the walls. Reinforcements were dispatched by afternoon. They approached cautiously, shields raised, weapons ready, expecting resistance. None came. The gates were opened without force. Inside, everything appeared normal. Too normal. No fires burned. No guards stood watch. Armor lay stacked where it should not have been removed. Weapons rested against walls as if set down deliberately. There were no bodies in formation, no signs of flight, no obvious damage to structures. Just absence. Commanders ordered an immediate sweep. Every building was checked. Storage rooms, barracks, towers, latrines, supply sheds, wells were inspected, cellars emptied. Nothing. No blood. No mass grave. No trail of retreat. Horses remained in their enclosures, unused, uninjured, nervous. A headcount was attempted. It failed. Records conflicted. Some rolls listed men who had been reassigned weeks earlier. Others omitted names that witnesses insisted had been present the night before. No one could say with certainty how many soldiers were missing. Search parties expanded outward. They followed the surrounding roads, wood lines, riverbanks, fields, old paths, abandoned farmsteads. Tracks appeared and then stopped, not faded, not disturbed. Simply ended. Interrogations began. Nearby villagers were questioned, traders detained, travelers held for days. Everyone denied seeing anything unusual. Some claimed to hear noise in the night, but nothing specific. Some claimed to see light, but could not agree where. Others insisted the night had been completely quiet. Reports contradicted one another line by line. Officers documented everything, then rewrote it. Statements were amended, timelines adjusted, certain details removed entirely, others repeated without explanation. Official summaries used careful language. Cause unknown. Enemy strength unverified. No evidence of siege or assault. Orders arrived from higher command, instructing restraint. No rumors. No speculation. No public explanation. The site was sealed. Weapons were collected and catalogued, armor removed and transported. Written records were boxed and sent south under guard. Some never arrived. A replacement unit was assigned weeks later. They refused to stay overnight, even under threat of punishment. They reported sounds that did not match the wind, shadows that did not match torchlight, a sense that the yard felt smaller. Their commander filed a complaint. The complaint was ignored. Soon after, the outpost was abandoned entirely. Maps were redrawn, the location renamed. In some records, it vanished altogether, replaced by vague references to losses during unrest or temporary withdrawal. Years later, chroniclers attempted to reconstruct the event. They found gaps, dates missing, pages torn, entire entries summarized into single, empty sentences. One chronicler wrote a margin note that survived only in copy. Too many voices, no agreement, something is being concealed or forgotten on purpose. No official inquiry was ever completed. No responsibility assigned. No explanation accepted. The men who vanished were never listed as fallen in battle, nor were they recorded as deserters. They existed in a space between categories, acknowledged but unresolved. And as the Great Heathen Army continued its advance, attention shifted elsewhere. Wars create many silences. This one was simply preserved, because whatever had happened that night did not fit into reports, strategies, or victories. And the investigation, for all its effort, ended exactly where it began, with an empty yard, and questions no one was permitted to answer. When official explanations failed, alternatives began to circulate. Not publicly, not in proclamations or chronicles meant for wide reading. They appeared in margin notes, in second-hand accounts, in conversations that ended abruptly when the wrong person entered the room. Over time, 4 dominant theories emerged. Each one sounded plausible. Each one collapsed under scrutiny. According to this theory, the outpost fell to a meticulously planned attack by the Great Heathen Army. Scouts had studied routines. Entry points were identified. Movements synchronized. The attackers struck silently, overwhelmed the garrison, and withdrew before dawn. On the surface, it made sense. The Great Heathen Army was known for adaptability, for learning quickly, for exploiting patterns. But the records resisted this explanation. No siege marks were found. No alarm was ever recorded. No pursuit followed. Most troubling of all, no bodies were recovered. Even the most efficient assault leaves traces, broken formations, signs of resistance, something. Here there was nothing. As if the event had been designed not to conquer, but to erase. This theory suggested that someone inside the garrison had opened the way. A bribed officer, a frightened soldier, someone motivated by fear or revenge. It would explain the lack of alarms, the opened gates, the attackers' familiarity with the layout. But again, the evidence failed. No names were ever accused. No confessions recorded. No sudden disappearances before the incident. Payroll records showed no unexplained payments. Letters intercepted after the fact revealed nothing useful. And if betrayal had occurred, why was no one spared? Traitors usually expect survival. Here, survival appeared irrelevant. Some believed the incident was less about force and more about collapse. That fear, confusion, darkness, and sound were used deliberately to fracture discipline. That the garrison broke apart without ever truly fighting. The Great Heathen Army had used intimidation before: drums, fire, demonstrations meant to terrify rather than engage. This theory argued that panic alone caused men to scatter, flee, or hide, leading to their disappearance. But this explanation raised even more questions. Where did they go? No refugees appeared in nearby towns. No deserters turned themselves in. No bodies were found in the countryside. Fear can break armies. It does not make them vanish. This was the theory least discussed and most carefully avoided. That the event was not tactical at all. That it was symbolic. The men stationed at the outpost were connected directly or indirectly to Ragnar's execution. Guards, witnesses, officials, those who carried out orders or upheld them. According to this idea, the attack was not random violence, but deliberate accounting. Not punishment, not conquest, closure. Supporters of this theory pointed to unsettling details: the lack of haste, the absence of looting, the precision of movement without territorial gain. But symbols leave marks. Rituals leave evidence. And here nothing remained, which made the theory both compelling and impossible to prove. Beyond all four theories lay something more troubling. Files referenced but never found. Reports summarized but never copied. Witnesses mentioned once, then never again. Later chroniclers noted that entire sections of correspondence from that period were simply gone. Not burned, not damaged, removed. Whether to prevent panic, preserve authority, or hide incompetence was never clarified. What mattered was the result. The truth became fragmented. Each theory explained part of the silence, but none explained all of it. And so the incident settled into history as something unresolved. Not a defeat, not a victory, a warning written in absence. Because sometimes, the most effective revenge is not being remembered for what you did, but for what no one can explain. History prefers clarity. It favors dates, outcomes, victories written cleanly at the end of a page, but not every event allows itself to be shaped that way. What happened after the disappearance of the outpost never received a final explanation. The campaign moved on. New battles demanded attention. New losses replaced old ones. And slowly, the silence became normal. The men stationed there were not honored as fallen heroes. They were not condemned as deserters. Their names appeared briefly, then stopped appearing at all. In later records, the location itself faded, maps changed, references softened. What had once been a fixed point became a footnote, then nothing. Perhaps this was deliberate, because acknowledging the event meant admitting something uncomfortable, that power, discipline, and preparation had failed against something that did not behave like an army. The Great Heathen Army continued its advance. Kingdoms fell, alliances shattered, and yet no chronicle ever paused long enough to fully describe that night. Not in detail, not in certainty, only in fragments. A line crossed out, a margin note left unexplained, a report summarized too neatly to be trusted. Some historians argue that the truth was lost. Others believe it was buried. Because revenge, when executed perfectly, does not demand recognition. It leaves behind doubt, unease, the quiet understanding that something was settled, even if no one dares say how. And that may be why the story still unsettles us. Not because of what is known, but because of what remains missing. So the question lingers, unchanged after centuries. Did the executioners of Ragnar truly meet their end, or did history choose not to remember how? If you have your own theory, share it below. Because some answers were never written, and perhaps they never will be.